In this video, we're going to be breaking down Greater Brisbane's most affordable council, which is known as Ipswich City Council. The switch, we're talking about the switch today. So we're going to be going on a suburb by suburb basis. I'm going to be taking you through a map view of the entire City Council of Ipswich, as well as talking through property prices. We've dumped a spreadsheet from realestate.com and Domain's data sets. We've put together 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom and medium price points. And it's really interesting to see that you can still buy affordable properties within 20 to 30 kilometers of Brisbane CBD with infrastructure already in place. And I've actually purchased some properties myself in Ipswich recently, so I'll get you to guess which suburb you think I've bought in the comments down below. Now, Ipswich City Council is one of the largest and fastest growing councils here in Greater Brisbane. And the reason it's so popular is the affordability, is the lifestyle and established houses running along the train line between Ipswich Central CBD and Brisbane CBD. There's even forecasts or talk about a fast or high-speed rail coming in down the track, which would be amazing, which is apparently going to take something like 20 to 25 minutes from door to door, from Ipswich Central CBD to Brisbane CBD. So we'll have to wait and see if that does come to fruition. But Ipswich has a lot going for it, but there's very different pockets and lifestyles in Ipswich. One of the interesting things is there's a lot of property development. There's a lot of suburbs which are being developed or infrastructure coming through, and I'll show you through aerial or satellite imagery where some of that oncoming supply is. Because if you're taking a property investment decision to buy in Ipswich, like I have recently, you don't want to be buying in these suburbs where there's lots of oncoming supply. The numbers are forecasting that Ipswich City Council is expected to double in terms of population by the Olympic Games. So we're looking at roughly 200,000 people at the moment, up to around 400,000 people living in Ipswich City Council by 2032. And so what that means is there's a lot of people moving into these areas. There's a lot of infrastructure and upgrades happening, and you still got that proximity and access to Brisbane CBD. You can go north to the Sunshine Coast, south to the Gold Coast. You've got a lot of options with Ipswich City Council, and it's its own hub in itself. Some clients ask me, how does Ipswich compare to Melbourne or to Sydney? I would say maybe it somewhat compares to West Melbourne or, things like Geelong and that, but it more compares to Sydney as a central CBD like Parramatta. It's its own hub west of the city, and it's got its own town centre and its own jobs and infrastructure. But also, a lot of people that live in Ipswich will travel into Brisbane or down to the Gold Coast for work. So there's lots of things to consider. I'm putting my own money in this council, and I'll reveal to you in the next few months my own property purchases within the Ipswich City Council. But I'd love to hear guesses of where you think or which suburb I bought my investment properties in. So let's take a look at the map on screen here and break down Ipswich suburb by suburb, and then we'll dive into some more of the data around the median price points. So on screen here, you can see a big spread of Ipswich City Council. It starts around Goodna and Ellen Grove here, works down towards Springfield Central, and then out into the western region towards Rosewood, then up north to Pine Mountain and out to Caralee. You've got Brisbane City Council on the border here. So places like Moggill, Belbowrie, Pullenvale, Forest Lake and Heathwood are Brisbane City Council. And then south of there, you've got Logan City Council. So you've got Greenbank, Baronia Heights and Regents Park. And anything east of there is going to be Logan City. And so Ipswich is not that far away from Brisbane. You can see Brisbane up here in the top, Ipswich Central around here. And so you're not looking that far as the crow flies from Ipswich to Brisbane. You've got Logan South, and then you've got Moreton Bay up north here, and then down towards the Gold Coast further south there. So as far as the crow flies, Ipswich is not actually that far away. The issue is if you're in a car, there is a fair bit of traffic. And so you will find that there's not a clear highway into Brisbane City. It tends to be 2, even up to 3 lanes wide, but generally 2 lanes wide to drive into Brisbane City. And so what that means is in peak hours, it can be pretty slow. But let's dive in and take a look at the established parts of Ipswich and then some of this oncoming supply and developments further out. And so these areas that we would tend to buy for clients in our business at Purpose Property are going to be more focused on the established markets. You've got areas like Camira, Carroll Park, Goodna, Redbank Plains, Collingwood Park. Moving in towards Ipswich, you've got North Booville, Bundamba, Eastern Heights, Raceview, Flinders View, Yamanto and Central Ipswich. Your higher end pockets of Ipswich are going to be in the centre here. So like Coles Falls, Woodend and Central Ipswich will have some higher priced properties on bigger blocks. And then as you move out from Newtown into Flinders View and Raceview and Bundamba, those suburbs are going to be more affordable for first-time buyers and investors, around that $600,000 to $700,000 price point. You can even buy in Ipswich as low as $550,000 with an established house on a 600 square metre block, but there are some big pitfalls you need to be wary of. And so the big ones are flood and soil. So you can see here we've got a river. It's called the Bremer River, and it runs through, just like Brisbane's brown snake, runs through the heart of Ipswich. Now, the Bremer River, you'll see there's not a lot of houses up here in North Booville or North Bundamba. And the reason is these areas flood very heavily, and so does lots of parts of central Ipswich. So you've got to be very careful if you're buying in an area known as Basin Pocket, that you don't buy a house that's heavily flood affected, because a lot of these streets will go under, and there are multiple flood maps to look at. And so that's a tip. There are different flood maps, so make sure you're having a look at not just the historical, but the actual flood mapping as well, or the estimated flood maps. On top of that, we've got areas like New Chum, which are taking away earth. And so these have been mined. There's mining going on. And if I switch to satellite imagery, you'll see all through here, look at all this mining that's been taking place, or logistics and earth mining, concreting companies, sand mining, dirt, all those kinds of things. You've got some new build projects as well. Wow, that is tiny. I mean, that's a great example of new housing supply that I personally wouldn't buy. They're barely even houses at this point when they're building new builds like that. I'd just connect the adjoining walls and make them townhouses at that point. But you'll see that there's some areas with some oncoming supply. There's been some mining works in between areas like Redbank Plains, Collingwood Park, and areas like Bundamba. And so you just got to be wary of that. The suburbs like Blackstone, Ebbvale, New Chum, Riverview have that within their vicinity. There's also mining overlays which you can get from the Ipswich City Council. And I know areas like Redbank Plains, which were mined in the past before the suburb was established, you've just got to check the soil and the condition of the property and just be aware that if there's any settlement on the property. This also occurs in areas like Eastern Heights and all the rest of Ipswich. There's some pockets which have what's called black soil. And black soil means that there can be bigger swelling of the soil and bigger settlement. And so you can get cracking in your brickwork or movement in the concrete slab or the pier construction of the home. And so that's why you might see homes with a bit of a lean in Ipswich. And they might need some underpinning or some work. Now, this doesn't mean that you want to rule out every house or every suburb in Ipswich, but you want to rule out flood overlays. You want to rule out if there's major structural damage or underpinning required. Yes, there might be some settlement on the property, and some areas do have more black soil, or some suburbs do have more black soil than others. But I'm just giving you this guide so that you're aware of all these risks, and it's not going to stop you from buying, but it might help you might help you avoid buying a lemon or buying a dud property. So let's zoom out. And so as you can see, you've got this red outline around here, around Ipswich, and all of this supply. You've got the RAF Amberley base here. There's some flight paths across here to be wary of. But there's a bit of national park down south, nature reserve, and then you've got more rural properties out west of Ipswich here as well. The heart of Ipswich is going to be more this pocket here, running along the train line out to Ipswich CBD. And that train line runs, like I said, all the way into Brisbane CBD. There's also Springfield. And so Springfield is a more expensive area, which is part of Ipswich City Council, and really the most expensive pocket. Your most premium houses and supply is going to be in this area. It's a master town plan city. And I've said in the past, I don't like Springfield myself as a property investment opportunity. Now, if you go back and watch some of my old videos, some people are rousing on me for saying that because they think it's a great area. And I'll explain to you why I don't like it as an investment opportunity. The reason is the block sizes tend to be overly small. You're looking at 300, 400, 500 square meter blocks in an outer area from Brisbane, where the blocks could be 6 to 800 square meters, which you could buy in more established parts for less cost. And so there is a lot of oncoming supply as well in Springfield. And the prices have risen because build costs have gone up so much. Labor, materials, bringing land to market. the cost of constructing a new and bigger house, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes have gone up more than 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom homes because of the inherent value to rebuild a home. And so for my investing philosophy, I tend to want to start with the land and location first. So if I had $800,000 to $1 million to spend, I personally wouldn't put that in Springfield on a 500 square meter block with a nice 4-bed, 2-bath house. If I had $800K to $1 million to spend, I'd buy in Logan City Council or Moreton Bay Council and buy a block with bigger land component, bigger underlying land value, and less building component. So instead of buying a 4-bed, 2-bath home in Springfield on 500 square meters, I personally would buy an 800 or 1,000 square meter block in Moreton Bay or Logan City with maybe a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. So you've got to look at your own investing philosophy and what works for you and your family. But that's just my take on the oncoming supply. And I don't really like these new build developments where they're on smaller blocks. Now, don't get me wrong, Springfield is a beautiful area. They've done a master town plan. It's very established. Some of the suburbs have been now around for 15 years. And they've got the golf course as well. And so there's lots of things to like about the area too. But I just say with my own money, I wouldn't buy there at this point in time or likely in the future. And you can see this is kind of a zoomed in view of Springfield. So you've got the main arterial road out there. You've got the train line, which is huge, out to central Springfield. And there's big development. They've got the stadium in here, the Brighton Homes Arena. They've got a lot of the established pockets. And you can see, how pokey these houses are. Grand South Circuit, the houses are squished on there. You've barely got any backyard in these kinds of blocks. And so it's not my personal preference, but some people like it for investment or their own home, and that's totally up to them. So as we zoom out, you can see where these new build areas are coming in. So you've got areas like Stocklands, and again, cookie cutter homes, tiny blocks. I think at this point, just join the walls of the houses and save yourself some construction cost. But each to their own. If you want your parcel or your small house or you want to invest in that kind of stock, go for it. But for my money, I don't think that's where I'd be investing. But it's just to give you context of what's being constructed out in Springfield at the moment. The other big construction zones are out here. So Ripley Valley, South Ripley and Ripley. And so when we're talking about the population going from 200 to 400,000, a lot of that's going to be due to this new infrastructure. Springfield growing, Ripley Valley growing, and that's only going to help these established suburbs which sit along the train line from Wulruka through to Ebvale, all the way through to Redbank and Goodnight down into Brisbane City. And so, yes, you've got to be aware of the risks and these areas that are, being built out or maybe have some construction or mining in them. You've got to be wary of the oncoming supply. You've got to be wary of what I think is slightly overpriced for the value proposition. But this is not going to affect you as an investor if you're not buying in Ripley. So you can see how small, again, these blocks are. They're building tiny houses. Again, very dystopian vibes. It's fine if you want to rent, in my opinion, but I wouldn't be buying this as a family home. I'd be moving into an area like Raceview. You can see the houses in Raceview. If we go to the established side, you can see there's an estate built here. This is far more what I'd like to see. Space around the house, room. You could extend if you wanted more room for the family down the track. You could add a granny flat for another lever to pull. You could renovate the front home because you're not paying a builder's premium. And so there's a lot to unpack when it comes to Ipswich. So let's take a look at the data. You've kind of seen now the outline of Ipswich City, how it sits relative to Brisbane up here and Logan and Moreton Bay, and the train line running in and the Springfield train line running in as well. So let's take a look at some of the data and what the prices are saying. So on screen here, we've got a data set that myself and the team have put together. You'll see that there are actually 82 suburbs in Ipswich City Council, a whopping 82, ending with your Manto. Now, there's a lot of blanks in these data sets because some of these areas which are out in the rural region, which you would have seen, Mount Mort and Mount Marrow don't have enough data to give us a reliable indication of where prices sit. And these suburbs like Ironbark and things like that are not going to have enough housing supply and be out in the western region. The areas as an investor and owner-occupier you're going to be looking at are going to have enough data to make it statistically reliable for us to get median price points. And this is based on the big websites, so Real Estate and Domain. And we've collated 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, and median house prices. So I'm actually going to start on the right-hand side with the medians and work my way back to 3-bedroom prices and give you my thoughts on the high prices and the low price points in Ipswich City Council. So if we start with the most expensive at a median level in Ipswich City, we've got Brookwater, Carolee, Pine Mountain, Marburg, Augustine Heights, and Springfield. sitting in that top 10. And what it shows is that Brookwater around the golf course, ultra expensive. They're massive homes. They can be on slightly larger blocks around the golf course there. The golf course is very well looked after. It's a premium pocket of Springfield. And so that's just something to be wary of, that there are, there's $1 million suburbs in Ipswich City Council. And those tend to lie around that Springfield area. Pine Mountain as well, hitting over $1 million. And then you've got Augustine Heights and Springfield, which are also in Springfield region, and they're sitting around $800,000 to $830,000 for the median price for a home at this point in time. And so that is your premium pocket of Ipswich. If you're wanting to be in the most expensive area based on the volume of housing, Springfield or that region of Springfield is going to be the pocket to go for. Then we move into an area like Camira, which I really like. It's just north of Springfield. You've got lots of options, bigger blocks, more established housing, closer to Brisbane City Council. You've got areas like Central Ipswich, which makes sense. It's close to the CBD and the infrastructure. And then we're moving into Coles Falls, Bellbird Park. So these are areas that are on the fringe of these kind of key pockets. And then you're moving into your more affordable price points at around that $600,000 to $700,000. So let's flip the script and go low to high. And so you can see, here is our cheaper pockets. So areas like Basin Pocket, North Booville, Ebval, and then we're moving into Newtown, Leichhardt, 1 Mile, Bundamba, Booville, and Gales. So these are houses between, say, $500,000 to $650,000. Now, your average house in these areas is going to be on 600 square meters. It's going to probably be built in the 70s to 80s, up to the not early 90s. And so you can still buy houses starting with a 5 or a 6 in front of them. Now, this is lag data, so I wouldn't be fully reliant on Real Estate or Domain, because these are just public websites which tend to be a bit behind in terms of what's actually happening in the market. In the actual market today, you're probably looking at 6 to 650, up to 700 in a lot of these suburbs. Now, the top list here, you're going to find a lot of flooding. So Basin Pocket, North Booville, Dinmore, Ebval, Newtown. A lot of those areas are going to be heavily flood overlaid or have had actual flooding in 1974, 2011, 2022 floods. And so that's why the prices are so down in the 500s. This next pocket of areas, Riverview through to Goodna, is going to be your more affordable pockets. So your 1 Miles, your Riverviews, Bundambas, Booville, Gales, Tivoli, which is north of Ipswich, and Blackstone, Goodna. These are all areas that are going to be more affordable housing. They're lower socioeconomic, they're lower household incomes, but in my opinion, they generally have better fundamentals for investing. You can get those 600 square meter blocks, get the value add potential, get maybe the granny flat or even development potential in these locations and add value to those properties, not just being reliant on the market. And you've got the established train line. So I'd be looking along the train line between Central Ipswich and Goodna, which moves into Oxley Darra, which is in Brisbane City Council. And that's where I'd be spending my money. So that might give you a hint as to which some of the suburbs that I may have put my own money in, which I'll tell you in the next 6 months. And then you move into that midsection, which is around that $700,000 mark. So these are generally going to be higher incomes, similar block sizes. And so you can buy still in the 6s and 700s. And then your new build areas like South Ripley and Ripley are sitting around that 750 mark, up to $800,000. Like I said in previous videos, around $800,000 is what you're looking at to get a new build in a new area. That's not where I'd be spending my money, but that gives you a guide on today's prices and where things sit. So let's have a quick look at 4-bedroom homes. I'll be interested to see, your more affordable and your more expensive. So Camira, really interesting to me. Your Manto's quite a good option. Bellbird Park's a good option. So you can still buy 4-bedroom homes for under $800,000 in Ipswich City Council. Now, when you add the value of the land and you add the rebuild value of these buildings, which are 4-bed, maybe 2-bath homes, a 4-bed, 2-bath home is probably going to cost you $350,000 to build in today's market value. And so if you're getting the land for, say, $500,000, the market value of a lot of these blocks would be at least $500,000. And so if you do the maths and you look at $500,000 of land value, if there was no home there, and $350,000 of inherent rebuild value, you're able to buy at $700,000 to $800,000 well below rebuild costs. So $50,000 to $150,000 below rebuild costs. So that's why I personally like these established pockets. I like the opportunity to buy an established dwelling where I can buy below rebuild value, maybe force some value through renovations at a point in time, and also have more options through granny flats or sell off to an owner occupier, or maybe even subdivide if you've got the block and space to do it. And so Rebuild is really interesting at this point in time in these areas that are established, that show good value, and you're aware of the fundamentals of these areas and the socioeconomics. And if this is what you can afford, if you can only afford 6 to 800K, Ipswich is certainly an area I would be looking at as a first home buyer and an investor within that price range. To certainly consider it, if we flip the script and take a look now at 3-bedroom houses, high to low, you'll see those flood areas coming in again, 1 mile west of Ipswich, and so is Leichhardt, and Churchill, they tend to be a bit cheaper. So those pockets which are established west of Ipswich tend to be cheaper than the ones east, which makes sense because if people want to catch the train into city, you're better off in being in Goodna or Ebbvale or Bundamba, or any of those pockets that run along the train line because you're 20 minutes closer to the CBD in those areas. So Goodna versus Churchill, I'd probably be buying a 3-bedroom in Goodna just because of the location versus Churchill, for example. And that's just based on the location. But if you could get a deal 50 or 70K below market value in Churchill, it all comes down to the right deal or the right property for the right price in the right location that suits your specific situation. So there are still a lot of affordable 3-bedroom houses. You can see how many suburbs sit sub 700K. Let's just actually take a quick look. There are 31 suburbs based on this historical 3-bedroom price data in the last 3 months from realestate.com that have a median 3-bedroom price sub 700K. So if you're a first-home buyer, there's 31 suburbs you could take a look at and potentially break into the market as a first-home buyer with house and land. And if you're an investor, you're still sub 700K, you're buying with good fundamentals if you can pick the right pockets and the right opportunity. So we've unpacked lots today. We've gone through a map view, we've gone through a satellite view, we've gone through some data at a median level and 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom level. I certainly think, to round this out, that Ipswich is a council that's overlooked. A lot of people have been talking about Logan who are investing from interstate. You see Sydney and Melbourneites talk about Woodridge and talk about Logan as an investment opportunity. But I think Ipswich is going to be the next run because of its affordability. It's a council that has a lot of pre-existing infrastructure. It's got the train lines. It's got the development down at Springfield, which is boosting the other areas as well. And it's got that rebuild value built in. There's also opportunity for development. There's opportunity when you buy with flood-free and avoid the wrong locations, as we spoke about earlier. So that's why I've put my own money in this council recently. I think there's some great opportunities out there, and it's just about picking that right property for the right price in the right location. So if you want to sit down with myself and you're interested in buying a property in Ipswich or anywhere in Greater Brisbane in the next 3 to 6 months, head over to purposeproperty.com.au and you can book in a free chat with myself. There's myself and 7 staff in this business at Purpose Property, and we're all about helping everyday Australians start and grow a property portfolio, especially if you're looking to buy in Southeast Queensland. That's where we specialise. And if you're looking for a course, if you're buying across Australia, you can also check that out at purposeproperty.com.au. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you give this video a click over here, because if you want to continue your property investing journey, YouTube thinks that's the one to watch. So thanks for sticking around. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.